I'd like to welcome our two speakers this afternoon, Betsy Galtz and Lynn Nolan with the International Society for Technology and Education. We affectionately call that ISTE. To give you a quick background on our speakers, Betsy is an elementary school principal in Pocatello, Idaho, where she has served for 10 years and is always advancing teaching and learning through innovative and effective implementation of technology and 21st century tools in schools. We're very pleased also to have Lynn Nolan, the Senior Strategic Initiatives Officer at ISTE. Lynn is in charge of strategic initiatives and projects involving technology and community-based teacher quality. Lynn has a very vast knowledge in innovations such as their NETS framework and other strategies. You will find that this session is filled with resources. In fact, we almost overdid it, but we definitely want to make sure that you have lots of resources at your hands, and we will post these resources on the website in addition to this webinar session. So if we don't get in time to go through every single one of the resources, please know that you can go back and find those. So with that said, we will turn the show over to you, Betsy.
All right, and good afternoon. It certainly is a pleasure to be here with you today. It is a real honor, to be talking to colleagues about this. And, you all may have a lot of good ideas as well. So I hope that as we go through resources, either, you find a really good one that would be helpful, or, maybe you've got another one that we aren't covering today because there are plenty of them out there that you think particularly hits the Common Core standards in a distinct manner that you think is helpful. And I know that we have a lot of you with us today who are leaders. I know that we're all facing so many challenges as we implement the Common Core, and this is an opportunity. That's the way I'm looking at it, at least. At least it helps. An opportunity to look at the many possibilities that are out there. So we're going to be talking about some of these challenges that you're throwing at us, and we're going to be identifying resources, a lot of different resources. Now what you need to think though is, that resource is going to hit exactly where we are, that's right what we need, and at the same time, oh, that one doesn't work. So you may be taking a lot of these resources back to your leadership teams and saying, what do you think? What's our focus? Where are we going? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where we're headed today. We're going to be looking at how the Common Core can be supported through the integration of technology. And we're also going to be taking a peek at ISTE's National Educational Technology Standards for teachers, students, and administrators. And if you aren't familiar with them, we're going to give you just a brief introduction and some great resources that ISTE has available. We're going to be looking at the Common Core standards in relationship to planning, your vision. I know you're always thinking about that. After all, that's the main way that we all get paid in education is, having that vision. Instructional strategies, what kind of things, such as student-centered learning, individualizing learning, resources. And we are going to give you a lot of resources for teaching and learning. And this is a great opportunity right now to effectively embed technology to enhance education. Okay?
You see the poll, we have a quick poll in there. How well do you know the common state standards? Very well, somewhat, not very well, no knowledge. It looks like of our population that we have so far, 55% had somewhat, rated somewhat, 30% not very well, and then 14% very well. So it looks like there's a sizable portion out there that know a little bit, but not much, and 30% not very much. 1% had no knowledge at all.
Okay, well then that gives us a good idea of, the direction to head with it and some of those things that we can do. Okay, and I think I am going to turn it over to Lynn to tell you a little bit more about ISTE's NETS.
Lynn, before you get on, I do want to add just a couple questions here that I think might be worth asking. One is that we asked about technology standards, not the Common Core, so I don't know if you'd like to respond to that, talking about what are the technology standards you're talking about as opposed to Common Core.
I'm so glad somebody asked about the technology standards because actually we wanted to start by talking a little bit about the technology standards. There are a set of technology standards that originally were named the National Education Technology Standards that our organization, the International Society for Technology and Education, developed in collaboration with many other associations and with thousands of educators globally. We began these way back in 1998 and had just actually a few years ago refreshed. Again, when we began to refresh, mostly the purpose of that was to really make them even more global and more for the digital age. When they were first developed, we were really focused on thinking about how do you use the technology, how do you learn about technology. The big shift, the paradigm shift, was not how do you learn the technology, but how do you use the technology to learn. So that's a big shift. You know, most everybody's been using the technology, but now people are wanting to think about not just the learning the technology, but the focus on using the technology for learning. And so the new sets of standards, and I will say that the first set of standards that were developed were for students. And then, of course, the teachers wanted to know, well, what about us? We need to know how to use the technology as well. And so we, again, worked with educators primarily in the United States initially on the first round of those standards. And we developed with others, you know, how do these standards need to fit into, you know, how do they look for teachers trying to help students and assist with teachers and students thinking about students using the technology, and then what does it look like when teachers are using the technology as well. And so these were National Education Technology Standards for teachers. And then, of course, teachers and school leaders and administrators wanted to know, well, certainly, you know, for administrators, and probably many of you school leaders that are on the phone started thinking about, well, what does this mean for us? Because as we're developing a vision for our schools and our districts, you know, it really is something a little different. And so what does this look like for us? And so we initially, the first set of standards that were developed for the school leaders and administrators were focused on them. Now, when we did the refresh, which was just recently, we did it in that order again, students, teachers, and administrators. And these standards looked quite different. Again, the focus was on what does this look like in this global world we're all living in, and how do we make this look different than just focusing on the technology, but focusing on digital leadership and, you know, in this digital age. And the words that began to pop up, particularly at the leadership level, were things about visionary leadership and, you know, innovative learning and teaching and leadership, and the school culture as we thought about what's different for them today. You know, you used to, as school leaders and administrators, you were known as the instructional leader, but now so often building level leaders almost have to be entrepreneurs, because you're looking at how you're going to provide funding for all that's going on in that school, and particularly now with the Common Core state standards coming out at you, with you being responsible for the technology that's going to make this all work. You're provided with challenges for assessment with the Common Core standards, and so many more things. It's not just you thinking about only the instructional side of things, even though that's a huge piece, and integrating it into all the content areas, but you also are challenged with funding all these things. Because you're not necessarily getting all the funding for carrying or implementing all of this. And so we were hearing this from all sides. So as you look at our new sets of standards, and we also have begun to, we've been working with NCATE for a long time in setting certification for NCATE, and worked with pre-service and in-service teachers for certification. And those have included in areas of what previously were known as teacher facilitators and teacher leaders, and now have shifted into areas that our teachers and administrators are looking at, which include teacher leader certification and also teacher facilitator or coaches. And so those have just recently been released. And one of the things I'll point out to you is the teacher facilitator, and as well as teacher leaders. We've worked with organizations and universities like Johns Hopkins University, who have a master's in technology and leadership that we do together with them. And also we're doing a technology leadership forum in the fall, and also we're in the process of doing a doctoral in international studies and leadership with Johns Hopkins that is tied to technology, and that will be announced in June. So those are just a few of the things we've done in that area. And it's very exciting that these standards are there. They're being used globally now, and that's why we're calling them NETs instead of National Education Technology Standards, because they're being adopted and adapted not only throughout the United States but in other countries as well. And I'm going to turn it back over to Betsy, and she's going to be talking about some of the resources that are available to you that you can use as school leaders, whether you're teacher leaders, or coaches, or building level leaders, or even at the district or state leaders. So Betsy, I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
Okay, so I'm going to start talking about, a little bit about the underpinnings, because what we need to do is we need to make sure that we've got those underpinnings in place in order for us to tie the technology to it, because it's not about the technology. That's not it. That's not the driver here. The driver is the teaching, and it's the learning that's going on, and how are we going to then pull those pieces in that we're going to be able to support it. And so let's look just briefly at that shift that's taking place so that these resources that we're going to give you are going to make a lot of sense to you. And the first one actually that really jumps out at you is building that knowledge through content-rich nonfiction, informational text. There's an expectation that 50% of instruction is going to address informational text, and that starts in kindergarten. And I know that many of you are saying, well, my basals, at least this is what I've been saying, my basals don't, they don't address all of this informational text. I don't have the money. Where am I going to find this? Well, let me tell you, one of the things that you can do right now are online resources, some of those open source things. And thank you, librarians. If we have librarians, a big shout out here for librarians. They are very important. And some of those national librarian organizations are putting together resources for you right now. So if you are looking for those, that is a great place to start looking. So using evidence from the text, though, too, and hopefully you're going to see some great resources that support that as we move forward in both literary and informational text. There are going to be new strategies, and as we're using those new strategies, particularly with digital text, there are different approaches that need to be taken. There's different strategies, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of that research that's been done. We do know about the closed reading approach, which is coming at us, but you also need to think about using digital resources and how that complicates things. And your complexity of text. Students are being required to read and think more critically at an earlier age. Well, that complexity of text, are there some things that can help us, determine that level? Yes, there are, and we've got resources for you. As well as then, obviously, you're going to want to be looking at, that academic language, which goes right along with it. So let's talk about and I want to mention I didn't put it in there, but don't forget about the writing piece of things. You're going to be writing to sources, using evidence from text, analyzing things, defending claims. Great resources for you there. How do you provide clear information and cultivate that writing? Okay, let's look at math for just a brief second to give us the underpinnings as we move forward with the math as well. And you find that there's more of a definite focus at each grade level where they are looking at very strong foundations and conceptual understanding. How do you apply the math? How do you know how to solve problems? Are you thinking across grades? Are you building new understandings on foundations that are already there? Each standard is not a new event, but an extension of something that's already there, some previous learning that's taken place. And how do we link to those major topics? Right? And rigor. Rigor has been increased significantly. You've got conceptual understanding of key concepts. They need to be able to access concepts from a number of different perspectives, and thinking and problem solving are at the center of this. So what resources do we have for you? Well, we're going to look at them in a minute. Don't forget, procedural skill and fluency is also still there, but students have to be able to access more complex concepts and procedures. They need to be able to apply the math flexibly and ensure that students are really using math to make meaning and to access content. Real-world experiences are definitely a part of this. So you got focus, you got coherence, you got rigor. Okay, so where do we start? Well, I know a lot of you probably are far down that path, so I'm just going to throw a few resources that are digital resources out there for you, so that way it's free. We're all worried about our finances right now, and what do we have that's out there? These are a few that can get you going as you're looking at your, where do we start, what is our vision, what kind of things do we need to do, and don't forget to embed all of these digital resources, the webinars, the planning tools that are online. And Michael Fullen recently, he just put out a book called Stratosphere, and he said there is a significant change in education which may be realized through the convergence of change strategies, which I know many of you are familiar with, whether you're talking about collaboration, whether you're talking about focus, whether you're talking about assessment, pedagogy, and the third one is technology. It's not a driver, but it is a part of it. So let's take a look at a few of these resources. There is a brief from Education Northwest that I found to be very helpful in just saying, where do I need to touch base? And actually I've looked across all of these and I've been able to pull some elements out of each of these. NAESP, a shout out for them, yay. The webinars that they've got are fabulous, and don't forget to look at the checklist. There's a great checklist there. 10 steps to migrating your curriculum to the Common Core is a white paper that I've used. It's fantastic. And I'll bet there are a lot of you who are familiar with the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, and they actually have a toolkit. This toolkit ties the standards with 21st century skills and provides examples for you. Now, one that I don't have on here, you're going to want to make sure you go to the Council of Chief State Officers, CCSSO, and that has a map. And it will tell you exactly where your state is. It's going to tell you what your state is doing, what your state's timeline is, what resources you have. But then, beyond that, start going around after you've taken a look at yours. There's no point in reinventing the wheel, but use that tool to go and look and say, what's going on in other states? And perhaps there are some things that I can be using from other states. For example, there are a lot of videos that are out there. The Hunt Institute videos are linked from numerous pages, and including the CCSSO site. And you can also go to YouTube. State pages. New York has a great one. Kentucky, Arizona. If you've got other suggestions, throw them on in that chat for us. And I put up one of these. There is an app. It is a Common Core State Standards app that you can download. It is free, and it is great to have on your digital device. And if you go onto that app, you'll notice that there is a website for Mastery. Oh, and that says Mattery, which doesn't make sense, but it is Mastery, M-A-S-T-E-R-Y. I apologize, masteryconnect.com. And this is actually an assessment tool that provides a means of monitoring progress on the standards, as well as connecting with other teachers and educators and sharing those resources. I know that my teachers have started to go on there and they're looking around and saying, oh, I found something. Now, if your teachers happen to be at the beginning level and just sort of, tiptoeing in the waters, Core Ninja is a great way to go in. If you just Google Core Ninja, it'll come up, and it is a great place. It's a little bit of a low stress, you're not thinking too, stressful, and it gets you going out of the gate. So as we move forward, we can take this as an opportunity to embed the digital resources into it. They're a lot less expensive, many of them. Many of them are free. You're able to differentiate by teachers. You're also going to want to make sure that you are staying updated and staying informed about where we are headed, you know, thinking about the end and instruction with the end in mind, and you're going to want to think about assessments. Most states have aligned with either the PARCC or the Smarter Balance, and you want to follow closely along with those. They're developing prototypes for national assessments right now, and they are transparent. You can go on, you have a good look for, you know what it's looking like. You'll see there that it says stay connected. You're going to want to click on that, and they will send you regular emails. As a matter of fact, I received a newsletter just the other week that talked about, that told me that teachers are participating in item writing and review for the pilot test in early 2013. And I know that we actually have a couple teachers helping out with that. The interesting one was they talked about students are being recruited to participate in cognitive labs, and they study how the students interact with the different items. Okay, so that, you know, it'll keep you updated. There's online training, there are presentations, there are videos. Change isn't going to happen immediately, so you know, we've been thinking about a short-term plan, a long-term plan, and looking at those different resources that are available for us. Now, this is just one of the things. Let me tell you what we've been doing in Pocatello. Now, we obviously started with unpacking our standards, analyzing the gaps, establishing our timeline, right? And it can be pretty daunting as those expectations really are ratcheted up. Now, in order to take advantage of and make sure that we don't miss anything, one of the things we also did is we pulled out the elements that are related to technology in the Common Core. So you see across this one particular, starting at kindergarten through 5th grade, and then we start with our strand, and we, you know, our anchor standards, and we pulled out the different elements that are there. Now, if you would like to, if you want to take a look at what we have done, and so that it gives us by grade level, the teachers can then go in and say, okay, these are some of the elements that need to be embedded. This URL will get you to a copy of ours. There's no point in reinventing the wheel, and take a look at it, and you know, you may find that it could be useful for you. Okay, so as we move forward, you're hearing things like collaboration, real world, creativity, problem solving, critical thinking. Does that sound a little bit like the nets that we talked about a few minutes ago? Yes. Okay, but we aren't talking, as Lynn was saying, we're not talking about taking technology out of teaching as a separate entity, rather having it embedded into teaching and learning. You'll notice in the Common Core that there's a general emphasis that emerges on the integration of technology, which includes information. You know, can they go out and can they find information? Can they use information from text? Can they pull it out? Communication, and this includes oral communication, visual communication, critical for the technology piece, and what different things do you have to be teaching them to go along with that visual communication. Productivity, technology is great. It is right there along with you, helping you and supporting you. There are also the issues of safety and ethical, social issues, and research, inquiry, problem solving, innovation. Innovation, you go, oh my gosh, Betsy, how in the world, you know, what do I do to innovate? I mean, that was always, you know, when people told me as an administrator I needed to be innovative, I thought, ooh, that's going to be pretty tough. But I think we've got some resources for you in just a second that'll help move you forward in that department. So let's take a look at a few of the resources. Now, I know that a lot of people, as you are working on them, are also working on, you know, taking an approach which is one that really looks at the project-based kind of approach that you might have there. And so Edmodo is one. It is a great resource. If you are not familiar with Edmodo, it is free. It is easy to use. It allows teachers to communicate. It allows you to communicate with students. So there are a wide variety of things that are available there. And you can use ThinkQuest. I know a lot of people may have already been using ThinkQuest. And if you have been using ThinkQuest, then you know that there are a lot of great projects. Project Foundry is one that is project-based learning. And in the project-based learning, it has great resources for teachers and students CK12 Flexbook tool has great materials as well as resources for teachers. And there's one that I didn't add on here, which was a project-based learning handheld. And you can just Google that one and it comes up. So if you're using digital devices, then you may actually want to take a look at some of those digital devices and look at that site. Project-based-learning-online.org. Apple's challenge-based learning is terrific as far as looking at what students are doing in the project-based area. Edutopia, one of the things I particularly like about Edutopia is the use of videos for teachers. And it really does a lot in the how-to part of it. And then Intel. Intel, if you are unfamiliar with Intel, Intel has a wide variety of tools there that we're going to talk about right now that show you a little bit more about those things. Visual ranking. The visual ranking tool by Intel is a fantastic tool that helps kids with thinking. It helps them think visually. It helps them get their ideas out there. Seeing reason is another one, and showing evidence. We talk about thinking critically. We think about how do you think critically, how do you make an argument for something. These are all tools that will help the students move forward in those particular areas. The Seeing Reason one actually creates visual maps of the factors and relationships in cause and effect. And cause and effect is one of those major aspects that you're asked to take a look at. So let's talk a little bit about writing, and I've got to tell you, inspiration costs, but it is one of my favorites. It is one of my favorite tools. It is a graphic organizer, which, as you know, Marzana, it's one of his popular ways of strategies for teaching, right? And it is a great tool to help you produce and publish writing and to work collaboratively. Now, if you don't have the money, though, you might want to try Kaku.com. And Kaku.com is a free graphic organizer that you might use. One of the things you need to start thinking is in kindergarten, actually it states that with guidance and support from adults, use a variety of digital tools to produce and publish writing, including collaboration with peers. And Kidspiration is one of those that will really help you out in that department. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar already with the Google site as far as the tutorials that they have for you and the vast resources that they have that will support your tools for writing. For example, when they talk about collaborative writing, moving back and forth, using Google is absolutely perfect for that. That's one of those that, allows students to work in small groups. It allows teachers to work. If you're doing professional development, it's another source for you. Go in there and explore some of those tutorials that they have. One of the ones that I know this is a little bit down a different path, though, but it's Grammarly.com. And Grammarly is one that is for the teachers, actually, and it allows students to submit their writing. You know how much writing we're going to be expecting to do. It allows them to submit the writing, it corrects the writing, and it checks for plagiarism. Okay, let's talk about one of the interesting things is speaking and listening being part of this. I was in with a group of administrators and teachers the other day, and they were saying, oh, I'm so glad to see that speaking and listening is part of this. Well, what are some other ways that we can actually promote this? And one of those that's very motivational for students is by using Voki. And Voki is avatars. They create their own speaking avatars. So they're able to put together, communicate, or portray a message to other students and use it either as a group, as an individual, and it's highly motivational. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, though, you might try extranormal.com. And this is one that uses graphics again, but it goes from text to a movie with avatars, okay? So they also have to think about what kind of message am I sending by the background that I'm including in here as well. With digital storytelling, VoiceThread has been popular and continues to be popular, and it is a great collaborative multimedia slideshow that holds images. Now think about some of those things that they show in the Common Core. It holds images, which is part of it, documents, videos, allows people to navigate slides and leave comments using voice, text, audio file, or video. So all of these elements are seen in the Common Core. And I also want to just mention the iPad and the iTouch, and I think that you know as far as speaking and listening goes that is a, that they are a great resource. I know that we're using our iPads right now to increase fluency actually with our students, and if you haven't seen some of that research, there is great research that indicates that the use of iPad can significantly move you forward in that department. Okay, let's look at language for a minute. Let's talk for a second about language, and you might say, Betsy, Google Earth, really? What are you talking about here? Well, actually, Google Earth is great, and if you're talking about building vocabulary, if you're talking about things like going out and doing lit trips with your kids. We use it for lit trips with our students, and it's great. And by a lit trip, what I'm talking about is as they're reading through a book, and these books actually have different areas, different places you go to. You follow along on Google with it, and it really brings it alive for them. And of course, with language, again, do Google Docs. Go out there, look at their tutorials that they've got, and some great ways to use it with language. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and head into math and Brain Pop. Brain Pop really is content that engages students and supports them. You can use it in either a traditional classroom, one that's blended, or one that's flipped. It supports individual learning, team learning, or whole class learning. So here you go with your personalized or student-centered learning, those kind of things. And it's a great fit also for mobile learning if you do have those mobile devices. There is a section in there which is specifically devoted to math, because it is more than just math, but there is a section specifically devoted to math. Khan Academy, I'm sure so many of you are aware of it. It'd be hard not to be these days with as much that's been out there on it. As a matter of fact, there has been a little controversy lately about Khan Academy too, saying, oh, not sure about some of the content. I say anything you look at, you need to vet and make sure that it's, what you want for your people. And there's one I didn't put up here for you, but I'd like you to think about it, and it's Learn Zillion, like Z-I-L-L-I-O-N instead of Learn Million, Learn Zillion. Okay, this is very much like Khan Academy, only they also have a specific area where they are working on resources for the Common Core. So that, again, that's Learn Zillion. And here I am back. I am a real proponent of inspiration, and inspired data is great. It builds data literacy, and it develops analytical skills and critical thinking. You hear them time and again, don't you, with the Common Core. Okay, so let's take it just a step further and look at a few activities. Exploratorium is a very interesting one. It's a museum of science, art, and human perception, and there are things to make, things to do, hands-on activities, online articles, videos, and more. So you may want to take a peek at that. One that it really pops out, because those who really are in the know when it comes to the Common Core will turn you to Illuminations. Illuminations is great. It is an NCTM resource with activities in the area of math for you. Now, I like this next one. However, it's for grades 3 and up, and it has gizmos that are online simulations that power inquiry and understanding, and there are training modules there for you. But let me tell you the one thing, that this one does cost some money. So you might, you just have to look through these and say, what is it we really need to do? What is it we need to be, working on here? And learning management systems, many of you may already be using these, but you can think about it as you're having kids produce things. You have to, pull things together, maybe resources, and you may want to be using more courses, things of that nature. Moodle is probably familiar to many of you. It is a free resource. We are actually using a combination. We're using Moodle and we're using My Big Campus. Our teachers are assigning different, say, videos for students to watch when they're at home, then they're coming home, and in some cases it may be text that they're looking at home, coming back in and taking a look at things. Edmodo, I mentioned earlier, is great. It is a free resource. Curriculum Loft or Blackboard. These are all good learning management systems that are great for production and for creativity. Now, you might want to think beyond just the classroom here too. You may want to think about professional development and how do I deliver professional development. These can be used for some of those resources as well. And if you aren't familiar with Livebinder, Livebinder is another fabulous resource. It is a free resource. I have given you, there is one person who actually I saw at the ISTE conference, Tamara Reynard, and she had some resources that she said we could share with you. So that URL there with the Livebinder will take you to her resources and give kind of an idea of how you might be able to use it. You could use it at the central office level. You could use it, for professional development. What it does is it's like having a binder. You can deposit any number of things into that binder, whether it might be it could be video, it could be graphics, it could be text, into that binder and use it that way. Now think about your students. Think about the projects. Think about collaborative work that they could do, or even individual work. So the sky's the limit here with livebinders.com. There are so many different things that you can actually use it for, and there is that example for you. I included the next one, oddly enough. I kind of threw it in there because I came across it the other day and I wanted to mention more. It's a resource that's been developed by Michigan Department of Ed in South Dakota. So there may be somebody on here who is more familiar with that than I am even, but they've taken the standards, the Common Core State Standards, and they have lessons and resources that they have started to attach. So you may want to go out and take a look at that resource. I did notice that a lot of those lessons came from Thinkfiniti, but if you aren't familiar and haven't been out to Thinkfiniti, you may want to take a look at that as well. Now, this is a little different shift on you here. Let's talk about the implications of using technology for just a couple of minutes, because the skills for developing comprehension from digital text, because a lot of our children are going to be using digital text now, whether it's a web page, whether it's a reader, whatever it might be, they are not the same as regular print. There has, and it was Dennis Small actually in Washington who brought that up to me initially. I saw a presentation of his and started thinking a little bit more about that. It requires more complex reading skills. And there are new types of media that we really don't want to forget, and we need to be teaching, how do you read graphics? Images are critical in the Common Core, and that is another thing we need to think about. When it comes to teaching math online, students actually, they have shown that they take less time in figuring out their problems. So, gosh, what do? Now, this is some research that I put out there for you that you may want to go and take a look at. And they were talking about how it really does take some more in-depth skills, some slightly different skills, in particular if they're going about researching online, which is a major part of it. They require complex reading strategies. There is another author as well who are researchers who are Coiro and Dobler, C-O-I-R-O and Dobler. They also have some excellent information on students using their prior knowledge of informational websites. So this is different. It's different. We also need to think we're going to use digital resources, but my golly, what does it look like then, and what changes do we need to make?
We do have a question on when you get a chance, a question on educational apps for mobile devices. How much of a lag is there between iPad and Android versions for the good app? And is there a disparity bad enough that districts should spend the extra money for iPad family projects?
I think that the Android is going to be catching up rapidly. And I think that what you want to do is start looking at what do I want to use it for? What are my main uses, my main thrust for this? And go at it from that perspective as well.
There are a lot of apps that are specifically coming out, though, for building level principals or those who are going in classrooms and doing observations. And I think it is something that is on everyone's mind, particularly as they're thinking about specifically going in classrooms and doing observations, but also quick fixes related to things that they can observe or either quick things they can do with students. One of the things that we're involved in at ISTE is it's called Mobiles for Education, and it's with UNESCO, USAID, World Bank, and others. And it truly is for mobile devices such as handhelds, because they're working in developing countries, but they're scooting ahead so that they can begin to make a difference in some of these developing countries, but they're getting funding by places like MasterCard and World Bank and others, because they don't want them being left behind, and they're being scooped up, of course, by industrialized countries too. So if that's something you want more information on, don't hesitate to email me. We've got a summit coming up the week of Labor Day where all kinds of things are being showcased to deal with those things specifically. So I would keep my eye on the news, and also there's a lot of things online about that, but I can send you some references to mobile apps, and if that's something you're interested in more about, because many people are turning to mobile apps and mobiles in the classrooms, let us know, because USDOE knows that people are looking at. In fact, Betsy mentioned Smart Balance and Year Apart. They've set some guidelines for what people should begin buying now in preparation for the testing that's coming up and what's minimal, knowing that people are going to be looking at some of those things.
And so I think we actually have that site for them to go to here in just a second.
Okay, so yeah, we've got a part on assessment coming up. So yeah, people are looking at that.
All right, and you know, one of the other things that as we're talking about those online skills and we're talking about Bloom's taxonomy, you know, and how the higher order thinking, and I don't know whether any of you are sort of my vintage, but actually Bloom's taxonomy has changed. Yes, it has changed, and if you are not familiar with it, you might want to go out, and if you go out and Google it, then one of the things that they do have is they have this great pyramid, you know, the pyramid that they have, and in that, at each level, they have possible technology resources to use for each level. And so that is really, you know, very helpful. Text complexity. Let's just talk briefly about text complexity because it is such a significant piece. Obviously, you know, it's been ratcheted down so that even, you know, 50% of your reading at kindergarten is expected to be informational text as well. And, you know, where do we find some of these resources? There are free, you know, open source resources. But if you want to find out a little bit more about the Lexile levels, there are Lexile analyzers out there for you. And I know that we have in our state a Lexile workshop that goes around to the different districts. It does cost something. Capstone Digital actually is going to come in and do one for I believe us for free, and so you might find out if they happen to be in your state. And CCSSO that I mentioned before has a great PowerPoint on text complexity, and they point to some rubrics that were developed by Kansas and Louisiana, and I think that NAESP may have actually mentioned them at some point. And so professional development is also a piece of the puzzle, obviously. It is a very strong piece of the puzzle, and it should not be about the technology. It should be about that teaching and learning. You know, the standards give us the standards, but they don't give us the how. You know, so what do? We're supposed to develop creativity, collaboration, you know, use authentic real-world problems, make it more engaging, you know, support inquiry, exploration, all of these wonderful things that are out there. There are any number of videos that really start talking about the Common Core. They are there to help you, including the NAESP ones that are already out there. I might mention that August is Connected Educator Month, and if you go to this, if you go to Connected Educator, you will find what some other people are doing in their districts. And this is in order to personalize, because I think people are realizing that everybody isn't at the same place at the same time. And you may not want to emphasize the same things at your 5th grade as you are at your kindergarten level. And so you may want to consider that and say, what is our focus and what can we maybe, pull out that's already been developed. Look at New York, Kentucky, the Common Core site itself. Achieve the Core is another great one. And so think of resources then that are linked to these different ones, such as the ones we just talked about finding information, communication, productivity, sounding familiar, okay? And professional development really will be critical as we move forward. And as I say critical too, I want you to think very carefully about as you were talking about apps a minute ago, one of the things you want, there are a lot of apps out there, and you want to make sure that they're hitting your needs, that they're hitting your focus, because we don't want to get sidetracked with something that's entertaining, but it isn't, something that's going to make a difference for us. We don't have that luxury at this point in time. We really need to be looking carefully at those, and a lot of resources are saying that they are aligned. Just really, really vet them well. I can tell you, for example, Ferdy Serum, he has a great book for 5th through 8th grade, which is called Digital Learning, Strengthening and Assessing 21st Century Skills. And that is a good example of one that is aligned well with the NETs and the Common Core. Okay, also look at those Hunt videos, look at NAESP information. And so if you go to either one of these, depending on whether you're with Smart or Balanced or if you're with a park, then they tell you, exactly what the bandwidth requirements are. They let you put in, it's a tool for you. It's a tool released by the coalition, and it allows you to say, okay, here's my technology, what do I need? And I might mention this is a great opportunity for advocacy for us, saying, hey, we need some more money. Look, we're going to have to, be doing online testing. How is that going to take place? And what's interesting is as you look at some of these guidelines, they talk about desktops, laptops, netbooks, tablets. Okay, so go out and take a look if you haven't already had an opportunity to do that. But look at that horizon as it comes at you. I know that I've talked to a few people who said, I don't know how we're going to get ready for that one. Fortunately, in Idaho, we've been doing it for quite a while, so I think we're going to be all right in that area. So let's talk a little bit about the assessment itself, and I'm just going to mention the Smarter Balance one here, and the SBAC one is slightly different, but they are feeling that you're going to get a better assessment. It's going to be more accurate as a result of the computer-assisted technology. So the question needs to go to that student's independent level, and as a result, they believe that it will keep the students more engaged. If you want to take a look at some of those samples that are out there, this is one site that you can come back to. Take a look at the site, and they will give you examples of the test items, and I'll tell you, it is fascinating. I saw one that was developed on students going out and actually designing their own park. And they had so much money to spend. They had so many items that had to be in this park, and it's fascinating. Go out and take a look, because I think that that's a critical part of knowing where you're going. One of the other things that I didn't mention, which I believe that I think I have been a little bit remiss, and I'm working on it hard this fall as we come back, and that's keeping my parents informed. And PTA has a great site. They've got, if you just link to the PTA side, they've got a great way of explaining the Common Core to parents. And I think we've been deer in the headlights kind of look, so think about those parents as we move forward too. Okay, and so if you think our future will require better schools, you're wrong. The future of education calls for entirely new kinds of learning environments. So that means bringing in that technology as well to support student teaching and learning. Okay, if you think that we'll need better teachers, you're wrong. Tomorrow's learners will need guides who take on fundamentally different roles, and I think you're going to see that with the Common Core, that's what they're saying. Conversation, communication, all can be enhanced through that technology piece. As every dimension of our world evolves so rapidly, the education challenges of tomorrow will require solutions that go far beyond today's answers. But finally, the one thing I want to mention, this is an opportunity. I'm looking at it as an opportunity. It's an unprecedented opportunity for us to change things and to move forward. I hope that this has been helpful for you today. It's been a privilege for me. I want to thank that group, Birds of a Feather group at ISTE with me, who's kind of talked me through some things, and especially my district too, and Patty Mortensen, who's been moving us forward. And I am going to turn it back over to Lynn. And
I will just say, second everything that Betsy said. Betsy, thank you so much for sharing all the great resources, and as you shared, and through all of these, there's so many wonderful resources that
I hope everybody doesn't have whiplash.
There's so much that through technology that can make this an easier process. As I shared earlier, we think that this was a roller coaster ride of just wow. I do hope you had your seatbelts on. We certainly are very willing to answer any questions. We're going to show you our email addresses in just a short while, and if you want to go back through any of this or dig deeper in any of these, we're glad to do that. NAESP, Honor, Azrae, thank you so much for inviting us to do this, and we look forward to collaborating in the future. And again, thank you all for being with us.
Yeah, and we thank you so much. You have, unfortunately, you've given us just tons and tons of resources, but that's exactly what our members have been asking for. And I think that this is going to be really wonderful for you all to go back and look at the recorded session and get some more information on it. But I think that the intent of this session was really to provide you with a rich basis of resources that you can look, and I think that's what a lot of people have asked us to do. So I want to thank you, Betsy, thank you, Lynn, for just a wealth of information. I think on behalf of our members, I think this is just a great time with September right around the corner. So with that, good afternoon.